Good afternoon from the farmer's garden. I'm one of the farmers. I'm out at the farm right now, and we have got Spunk here with us today. This is his first time to the farm since he was a little baby puppy. Hi, Spunk. And I wanted to keep going with my Homesteading 101 videos that I'm doing and talk about dogs in the country. If you have not lived in the country before, or if you have not lived in the country in Texas before, there are some things to know about dogs before you move out here. We like our dogs out in the country. We know that many of you like your dogs in the city, but we like ours out in the country. I'm going to show you Spunk running around out here. He's tired. He might not run much, but I'm going to show you. Spunk, come here, boy. Come here. Come here. So Spunk is currently just on our garden space out here. Come on, bud. Come on. So he's only got a few acres to run, and we haven't been here long, and he's already gone all the way around it and checked everything out, smelled some smells, seen some things, and he's having a big time out here, aren't you, Spunk? You having fun? You see, he's looking, he's learning, he's smelling the things. Like I say, he's tired now, so he's not running around as much at this point. Those of us who kind of grew up in the country look at our dogs a little differently sometimes than people who either grew up in town, or maybe you grew up outside of town but on a small piece of land. Maybe you've never really had a farm or a homestead before. We tend to use our dogs a little differently out here. I did not move outside of city limits until I was about 6. I think I was almost 6. Dogs are different in the country. So at the time, my parents bought a house and about an acre, and there was no perimeter fence on our land. And the very first thing we did was fix our male dog. For one, he'd always been in a city fence. He'd never been able to roam. He had not been fixed. He got fixed immediately so he wouldn't roam and cause a nuisance. Our female dog was already fixed, so that wasn't a problem. And then we started teaching them property lines. Dogs in the country are a whole different thing. We like to see our dogs run. We like to see our dogs doing things that dogs are made to do. And whether that's hunting dogs or cow dogs, or it's just your mutt that likes to run. That's what we do. And there's two sides to that story, and I'm going to try to touch on, well, there's many sides, but I'm going to try to touch on kind of the two major sides. First of all, when you move to the country, be prepared that you will have other people's dogs occasionally. I often see on various Facebook posts and groups, people are like, oh, I'm on county road such and such, and there's a dog out by the road. That dog very likely has a home, unless it's starving or it's got a pile of dog food there that indicates it was just dumped. It's very likely that dog has a home. He's just not there right now. Our dogs like to go and run and do things. And so when you move to the country, that's one thing to be aware of, is that the dogs are different out here. As far as, they're not always in a fence. They're certainly not always inside. There's fewer full-time inside dogs out here. So you may occasionally run across a dog that appears to have no home. Give it a little bit of time and make sure it has no home. I had an amazing dog when I was in high school and college that a neighbor locked up one day. My granddad had 100 acres, and my dog and I would run the whole 100 acres. I left for college, and my dog was running, I think with my brother, or maybe she just went out one day on the 100 acres. And she went across a fence line, because dogs do that. They go across barbed wire. They don't know. And within like 10 minutes of her leaving the house, my mom was getting a call. I've got your dog. I know she's lost. And my mom's like, where are you? And she went to get the dog, and they were literally like 15 yards across the fence. The dog would have made it home. Give the dogs some time and see if they'll go home. The flip side to that is control your dogs. It's really not that hard to property train an animal. That same dog, we did not have a front yard fence when I got her. She was like 8 or 9 weeks old. We didn't have a front yard fence. We lived on a county road. The very first thing I did, she's a little bitty puppy, I taught her that property line. to the point that she would race up and down that fence line or that property line as if it was a fence. You know, the trash truck would come by and she would run the line. She wouldn't go past it. She wouldn't go into the road. It's really not that difficult to teach your dog those skills. If you're not sure how to do that, you can reach out to me and I'll kind of walk you through it. You can find it on YouTube. You can find it in books. Property training is not that difficult, and it needs to be done because other people shouldn't have to deal with your dogs. Yes, it happens occasionally, so I'm going to say that. Occasionally you're going to see a dog that's out. Give it time, make sure it's not going to go home. But if you have a dog that is routinely out, you're also failing as a pet parent to do what you need to do as well. Also, dogs get dumped a lot more in the country. It's horrible and I hate it, but it's something you need to be aware of. And people will also kind of learn where the dogs get picked back up, and they'll dump there on purpose, knowing that the dogs will be picked back up. I'm not going to tell you to starve the dogs. I'm not going to tell you to ignore the dogs, but I am going to tell you that if you are not in a position to keep the dogs, do not bring them up to your house and begin to feed them. Because technically by law, if you begin to feed a stray animal in Texas, you have claimed that animal as your own, and then you are responsible for it medically, or if it was to bite somebody. So don't just go out and start feeding all the dogs. One, like I said, some of them have homes and they'll learn to come to your place for food instead of going home. But also you will become responsible for those dogs that you never really wanted. You're just trying to be a nice person. So that's something to keep in mind. Same with cats. If you begin to feed stray dogs and cats, in Texas, the law reads that basically you have assumed responsibility for those animals and they're now yours to take care of. This is kind of rambly, and I know it doesn't make sense and it sort of contradicts itself, like teach your dog to stay home, but dogs might not stay home. The long and short of it is, if you've never seen a dog, I've had a couple of collie cross dogs. Collies are amazing dogs, but they like to go. They really are more high energy than you would think. And if you've ever seen one just out running, and they're not necessarily chasing anything, they're not necessarily doing anything important, but their ears are laid back and they're just flopping in the wind and they're running and going, you can't imagine how satisfying it is to see your pet doing that. And that's what we like to do out here in the country. We like our dogs to be able to go and explore and see the things and do the things. And it is not always possible to build fences in a way that dogs can't get through. If you were to try to, use chain link or something like that to fence 100 acres, it would be astronomical. So a lot of times the dogs are going to run and they don't know fence lines. You can teach them, you can train them, but occasionally they're going to come to a fence and they're going to go through it. They're going to chase the rabbit, they're going to do the thing. So pay attention to not picking up somebody else's dog. Hunting dogs are another thing. A lot of times they'll have tracking collars or they'll have bright orange and they're running and they're going and there's somebody looking for them. So please don't take them home. Please don't try to rehome them. Give those dogs some time to try to find their way back home. On the flip side, don't move to the country and assume that your dog is free to roam. If he goes on the neighbor's place and kills chickens or livestock, they are within their rights to protect their property and their livestock by killing your dog. And you don't get to be a crybaby about it. If you were not doing anything at all to protect your own dog by keeping it in a fence or training it or whatever, you're just letting it roam the neighborhood, they can protect their property. So that's something to be aware of out here. And don't feed the dogs if you don't want to keep them, because they're yours now. So that's Homesteading 101 Dog Edition. Just when you move to the country, there's some things that are different. It's not going to be like living in the city with your dog. And you just need to kind of be aware of that before you move out here. Or if you've already moved out here and you're like, what the heck is up with the dogs? Maybe that made some sense to you. Maybe now you're kind of like, oh, duh, I get that now. Dogs are great. They're amazing friends. They can also be a lot of work, especially in the country, but they're a big joy out here. Anyways, that's all I got today. I hope you enjoyed your visit to the farm and my random rambling about dogs in the country. Yeah, thanks for stopping by. Tell your friends about us and come back when you can stay longer.